warm welcome to thorough newspaper analysis, which is presented to you by LawSeco. So, today we'll discuss important articles from the newspaper of 18 June 2021. We have three important articles of the day. The first is titled as a place for disruptive technology in India's health sector. In this article, we'll discuss what is a disruptive technology and what can be its application in healthcare sector. The second article, we have clubbed two important articles regarding the UAPA regime and we'll discuss about the draconian law and how it must go now. The third, we have the dignity to the departed. In this article, we'll talk about the rights of the dead. It is an article from the Indian Express. This newspaper analysis is presented to you by me. My name is Ankita Parida. I have completed my BTech from IIIT Bhubaneswar and MTech from ITR, and I have completed my LLB from Fakir Mohn University, and I am a trainee associate at LawSeco and also working as a current affair expert. You can reach out to me at my LinkedIn or Twitter handle, which is mentioned here. Moving to the MCQ question of the day. Bureau of Energy Efficiency BEE operates under. Your options are Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, option B Ministry of Power, option C Ministry of Jal Shakti, and option D none of the above. You can write your answers in the comment section. The descriptive question for the day is Introduction of Disruptive Technology in the Healthcare Sector. Explain the benefits as well as the challenges. You can write your answers in 250 to 300 words. So for free study materials and TNF PDF slides, please join our Telegram group. You can scan this code of this group and you can join it from here. Our previous Telegram group has been dismantled for because of many reasons, and now this is the new group. You can join this from this code, and also you can get the link in the description section of this video. Also, you can join our Insta channel LawSeco Judiciary, LawSeco Clad Prep, and UGC Net LawSeco for more such updates. Moving to our first article of the day, it is about disruptive technology in India's health sector. So, in this article, we'll discuss what is disruptive technology and how it can be applied in the healthcare sector to improvise the healthcare sector of India. So, what is a disruptive technology? So, basically, by definition, disruptive technology is an innovation that significantly alters the way consumer or industries and businesses operate. For example, the e-commerce sector. Today, we do not have to go out to get medicines or essential, but if we order just from our phone, it is delivered at our doorstep. So this is a kind of disruptive technology in the marketing sector that we are seeing, that the goods are getting delivered right at our home. Second is GPS. For example, nobody had thought that a simple mobile can navigate their way anywhere to anywhere, and GPS is making it possible. And also, the ride sharing apps like Ola and Uber can be an example of this kind of disruptive technology. And last but not the least, the telemedicine, which has been so successful for providing assistance and medical help to people in rural and semi rural areas through the telemedicine apps, is a example of disruptive technology. So how can we use these disruptive technology in our healthcare sector? There can be many methods, and today we have so much evolved in our technology sector that we can definitely think of using this kind of disruptive technology in our healthcare sector. Some of the examples are the blockchain technology. The blockchain technology can be very well used to keep the medical data or records, and this can be captured right from the mobile application of the people, and also it is shared with a secure network and kept in blocks such that it is well distributed and there is less chances that it can be tampered by the hackers or something like that. Secondly, the big data analysis we have today is very essential, in which we can do symptom analysis and we can go to a conclusion to detect the diseases a person is having. Also, we can rate the hospital and the healthcare facilities we are facing, and by that we can have a comparison between the healthcare facility. This will also help in making the healthcare sector improve by facilities very much. Third thing we can have is internet of medical things, like we have IoT, like the internet of things. There is something called internet of medical things, IOMT, which connects infrastructure to medical devices and software applications, and also the doctors and the paramedical workers, like that. And the whole healthcare system is connected through this internet of medical things. And using this kind of system, the healthcare sector can be uh, can be very much use this and facilitate seamless provision of facilities to the people. The fourth thing we can think of is cloud computing. Cloud computing, we know today we all are using more or less cloud computing when we are storing our data in Google Drive or one box or something like that. And in this medical system also, we can use the medical history, insurance history, and also the medical records of the people, and even use them when somebody is admitted to the hospital, and the doctor can very well analyze the symptoms and all the history, medical history of a person using the cloud computing thing. Even the WHO, World Health Organization, has recognized it and has recommended it. So let's see what can be the benefits. The benefits have been reaped by many international countries, like China is one of them, who has used the 5G powered temperature measurement devices in their hospitals to record the data of the patients, and also use their manpower whenever needed. Also, it has used these kind of devices to measure the heart rate on also the blood oxygen. But in India, we see that because of lack of healthcare workers, it has been seen that the blood oxygen level of the people have decreased at night, and they have collapsed because of that. But if we are using this kind of disruptive technology, that problem might not occur, and the precious life can be saved. In China, it has been seen that robots are being used to sanitize the wards. But in India, we are still using manpower when there is a lot of shortage, and these kind of work like sanitizing the wards or the floors, this can be very well and very effectively done by the robots. But because we are using the manpower, this manpower is can be diverted to other better sector, like using them for medication or helping out or paramedical stuff, rather than using them for cleaning the wards and these kind of work. So what can be the benefits of using disruptive technology? According to the author, this disruptive technology use can give us a universal health coverage, and this can be only be achieved by using the digital technology. This will not only robust the strategy for using our healthcare system in a more effective manner, but it will also be financially viable, and also it will make the organization reach more and more people. Second thing is that need to be a strategy to emphasize on ethical appropriateness, and this kind of disruptive technology can keep a track on the attendance of the healthcare workers, on the hospitals cleanliness, and all these kind of parameters, if the doctor is attentive or not, and if they are taking action at the right time or not. So this kind of technology can bring transparency and ethical appropriateness in the field also. Third best thing of this use of disruptive technology is that we can bring in the traditional and local knowledge and experience to be used through the community workers and doctors, along with modern technology. By using these technology, by keeping these resources in our cloud computing, by using big data analytics, and also this technology can be used for the welfare of the society, because by using something called artificial intelligence and big data analytics, one can detect the spread of COVID-19 or other kind of diseases in an area, and what steps can be taken, what should be the optimum way to go through it, can be advised by these kind of technology to the administrators. So the challenges, let's discuss the challenges, which is very important to know in this thing also. The first challenge is the standardization of health data. Today we do not have any standard format of recording the health data. If we do not have a standard format, then how can we record it in effective manner in cloud computing system, and how the big data can use it for analysis? So this is a big challenge here. The second is the organizational silos. So the bureaucracy and the red tapeism is a very big issues, and also it is relevant in the healthcare sector also. So the organizational silos will be disrupted if this kind of technology is brought to healthcare sector. The third thing is the biggest concern, that is the privacy and the medical health record of the patients are paramount, and the privacy need to be achieved, need to be taken care of the patients. In this, the blockchain technology, which is very secure network, this can be used to secure privacy. And the last but not the least, we need a very high investment, so the government need to allocate fund slowly steadily to bring this kind of technology, so as to help out the healthcare workers and not face the shortage in the third wave, which is predicted to come in some time. Moving to the second article of the day, it talks about the UAPA draconian legal regime. UAPA stands for Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So in this article, it has we have spoken about how UAPA has become the black box of Indian jurisprudence. Recently, the Delhi High Court has given its judgment granting bail to three activists after being jailed for over a year, and this represents the judicial pushback to the authoritarian regime under UAPA, or Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Unlawful UAPA was imposed during emergency by government of India in 1962, and it was amended in 2004. So according to this UAPA, it has some kind of draconian regime in various forms, which we'll discuss in this article, and thus it has become a black box. So let's discuss what are the features of UAPA. First is about the definition of terrorism. Under the section 15 of UAPA, the definition of terrorism is very vague, and it is used to license or to classify all kind of infractions as terrorists. So because of this lacuna of clear definition of terrorism, many innocent are generally booked under the UAPA law. The state needs to the state is required to show why some kind of activity is categorized as terror activity, but to its counter, nothing that kind of sort is happening in India, and simple law and order issues are designated as terrorist problems or terrorist activities. Also, the second point we want to discuss is that any kind of case which is filed need to be backed by facts. But to its counter, in India, because of this UAPA regime, these when some kind of suspicion is created regarding the activity, if it is a terrorist activity or something like that, then generally speculation and recent trends are brought into the plate, and the circumstances are also covered, but the facts are not very well covered. So this also brings an ambiguity in booking like looking for the facts of the case. The third and the root problem of this is the bail provision, that the issue of bail. Section 43d5 prevents the release of any accused on bail if, on a perusal of the case diary or a report made under section 173 of CRPC, the court is of the opinion that there are reasonable grounds for believing that the accusation is a prima facie true. So if there is any reason to believe that the accusation is prima facie true, then under section 43d5, then the evidence is looked at one side only, and it would prohibit bail, and it would prohibit bail. And based on it, it is very draconian, because in the criminal trials takes years to complete, and because of overburdening of the cases in India, the average um, average time which is taken by the trial is more than 3 years or more. So in this case, when somebody is booked under the UAPA regime and they are not allowed for bail provision, their rights under Article 21 is is hampered to a lot extent. So the judgment in the Delhi High Court was that by Justice Siddharth Muridul and Anupam Jairam Bhamdani says that even though Section 43D5 departs from many basic principles of criminal justice, there are other fundamental principles of cardinal significance. They mark three provisions which are here. First is the definition of terrorism under Section 15, which is very vague and used as a license to classify all kind of acts as terrorism. The second is the offense must be specific in their terms and which is not in the UAPA regime, and therefore it must be made more specific. And third is that the accusation of protest and chakka jams are not acts of UAPA. So the court has reiterated that courts can subject the government case to scrutiny even in bail hearing, and there needs to be a balance in citizens' civil rights and imperatives of anti-terrorism law. Moving to the third article of the day, it talks about dignity of the dead. On May 18, 4,529 people died of COVID in India, and it was the highest single day death toll due to COVID. In Delhi and Bangalore, friends and relatives of the deceased has to wait for around 20 hours to cremate them. This shows the insensitivity of the state towards the dead and the family that are feeling the trauma of the dead of their near and dear. Also, in the past, we have seen that the Ganga river was flooded with dead bodies, and there were many dead bodies floating in the corners around Varanasi and many places of the banks of Ganga. It shows that in India, people are not getting decent burial and cremation, which is their right by Article 21. Even the WHO in early 2020 issued a management guidelines, and subsequently the center and the several state government too issued their guidelines, which collapsed during second wave. So why it was needed? Let's see. The Uttarakhand High Court in 2017 had ruled that river is a legal person, and with it it has its corresponding rights. So because the decent burial and cremation is the right of the person, and because of huge number of death and overburdening of the cremation center, these bodies of the people have been thrown on land and water without any regulation. It hampers two kind of legal rights, that is one of the legal right of the river, and second is the right of the person. The person is entitled to dignity of decent dignity and decent burial and cremation, which is not provided to them because of overburdening of death toll, and because of huge number of death during the second wave of COVID. And second thing, the legal person, that is the river, and its right has been hampered because of undignified dumping of COVID dead bodies in river, which infringes its right and is detrimental to the ecology. Right to dignity and privacy include dead body of human being, and right to life includes right to a decent burial and cremation as discussed. And it is not just reiterated by the judgment given by the Supreme Court of India, but also it has been repeatedly been ruled by the Madras High Court and also the Calcutta High Court. So the NHRC also took cognizance of it, and it had stated that the um, the central government and state government must look for electric cremation rather than piling them up and going for burial, because of two problems. First is that there will be no need to there will be no need to dig more land, which is a problem today. And second thing is that it will prevent spread of diseases. So the NHRC took cognizance of the matter and issued notice to the central government and the state government of UP and Bihar. And in May, it has also issued an advisory stating that dead bodies should not be allowed to pile up during transportation. So, what are the steps needed to be taken in order to ensure that the dead are also getting dignity? So, the first step is that center must frame legislation that incorporate NHRC recommendation, WHO guidelines, and norms followed by medical authorities across the world. The second step they can take is implementation of photographic database of bodies to avoid issues relating to identification of disease. And the third but most important is that hygiene protocol must be followed, and safety and security of the people who are handling the corpses must be ensured. So this was all for today. Thank you.